Shift Power Pod.
This is Mind Shift Power Podcast, the #1 critically acclaimed podcast where we have raw, unfiltered conversations that shape tomorrow. I'm your host, Fatima Bay, the Mind Shifter. And welcome, everyone. Today we have with us Tara Hodgson. She is out of Alberta, Canada. She's an author, and most importantly, she's a teacher. And the thing about teachers is they always see more and differently than the rest of us. And we're going to get into a really deep conversation from her perspective. How are you today, Tara?
I'm really good. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming on. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Mhm.
So tell us, why are you here today? Why are you on this podcast?
Yeah, I have been told that I talk about really difficult subjects. And when I read the information about this podcast, it just felt like such a great fit because you like to tell the truth and have difficult conversations because they matter.
Yes.
So it was a perfect fit for me, and I was very excited to be accepted on.
Well, I'm very glad. Let's dive right into it.
Let's do it.
So you're in the classroom every day. What are teens dealing with internally that parents have absolutely no clue about?
I would say, well, there's bazillions of things. However, if I have to pick just one, I think the mental burden that kids are carrying, pressure specifically. I think there's a lot of pressure in the classroom. There's a lot of pressure from parents, and then there's the added complexities of this whole new world of pressure that's happening online. Um, and I think that would be the #1 thing that I am seeing kids are dealing with.
So when you say mental burden, you named two things. The online pressure, which is not a minor
Okay.
detail. It's a very, very big deal. And can you take a little deeper dive into that?
Yeah, I think with what I describe phones as specifically is that they have become like the main character of kids' lives because
Mm.
their world does revolve around them so much that this device now is such a critical piece of your identity. And I think that comes with a lot of pressure because now you're constantly witnessing other people's lives. You're constantly witnessing people's highlight reels. The whole feeling of FOMO, fear of missing out, which I think is a very relatable teen feeling, regardless of what generation you grew up in. But now having constant connection with what your peers are doing makes that FOMO so much more prevalent because you're constantly seeing what other kids are doing. And if you're not included, now you're witnessing, the play by play of those events that you're not included in. Comparison culture, again, very common with teens, regardless of the generation they grew up in. But now having phones with, again, the highlight reel, the edited pictures, the AI, you're only seeing such a small blip of people's lives, but you're comparing what you are experiencing with that small little blip that you're seeing. All of these like very real, very, again, like things that span generations have just become so much more loaded because of these devices that are constantly in kids' back pockets.
What do you say to the kid who understands everything you just said and they can kind of see it a little bit? How do they put the phone down?
I think that's, it's tricky because, it is such a form of currency too, like to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
I know the kids who don't have a phone, they don't feel like they fit in, or they feel
Oh,
now like
yeah.
they're so disconnected from everything else. I will say I read this quote and I wish I remember where I saw it because it resonated with me and I've had the conversation with some of my students about it as well. But it said this is the first generation of kids who will grow up experiencing more of other people's memories than their own.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, like that just makes me feel so sad. And I think once kids start to see that, like, why are we spending so much time watching other people when you could be out and doing the things? And, it's our whole job as a teenager is to go out and experience and make mistakes and, make messes and, just learn and experience and do things that you aren't going to do when you're a grown up that now we're like, ugh, we would never do that. But like, that's the fun of being a kid, and that's kind of their job, and I feel sad for kids that they're missing out on the opportunity to make their own memories.
That is a really, really valid point.
Mhm,
Living living through somebody else's memory. Some of them are more interested in following Cardi B than they are figuring out their own lives.
mhm.
That's a problem.
It is,
Whether it's
and
Cardi B or whoever is the person that comes on next. It's whoever the next artist, the next entertainer, the next famous person is. Following them instead of figuring out your own life. What does that do for their future?
yeah, and I think, like, for myself, when I look back on those teen years, like, oh, for sure, there are things I regret and things that make me like, "Ugh," like, "Why did I do that?" or "Why did I say that?" But also there's so many memories that I just look back at so fondly and the things that my friends and I did and, where we went and, oh, I don't know, all the fun that I had, and there's so many kids who aren't going to get that. But I do think there has to be a balance because, yeah, they're gonna follow their favorite, influencer, artist, whatever, but you need to not get so absorbed in the life behind your screen and focus more on what life you want to live. And I think that's where kids have a hard time finding that balance.
Let's talk about that a little bit deeper. For the teenagers listening to this right now, who are I would say you are really a victim of the society that as adults have left you that you're forced to grow up in.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, like, when I think about it, it's not the kids' fault. And I've actually had so many parents and, my own peers say, I'm so glad that there wasn't social media when I was younger. But then they proceed to immediately hand their kids a phone with social media. Well, that's not really fair. So if you know and you recognize that that's not a life you would have wanted for yourself, why are you giving that life to your kids? But also, like, these phones, the devices, the social media apps, they have been designed very specifically by these tech companies to be addictive and to be enjoyable and to lure you in. So the kids are kind of, yeah, they're just a victim of this design and of this society of these companies and these people who want you to continue to follow them and to use these apps more and more and more so that they can make money.
I'll be honest with you. I grew up in the '80s and '90s,
Hmm.
and I would still consider myself an '80s kid.
Yeah.
It was obviously I'm a lot older than the teens. I'm the same age as most of their parents. So, I grew up in a different era. I would say that even though we try to portray ourselves as we were the best generation, every generation does. And it's bullshit. But sometimes we remember things in pink clouds instead of what they really were.
Nostalgia.
Uh,
Nostalgia is a beautiful thing, right?
yeah, and it's also full of
Mhm.
lies. So
Yes.
so we weren't perfect either, and to a certain degree, we were victims of the big companies as well. I'm
Totally.
getting to a point with this. So, we grew up with, "You ooh, you're not cool unless you wear Jordache," or if you have a Guess handbag or Guess jeans or British Knight sneakers. I mean, this is all old stuff now,
Hmm.
but, you can rename those things with different names today, but it is the same thing. Telling us in our instance, it was magazines. In today's instance, it's the Internet. But the difference is
Agreed.
that it's far more intensified for our teens now. What does their future look like? For the teens listening, I want you to talk to them and not just me. For the teens listening right now, what does their future look like if they don't make a decision to not just follow along with being as digitally connected as the whole industry wants them to be?
Honestly, I think at some point, most people will look back, most of this generation of kids, I think they'll look back and feel sad. Like we all, like we said, nostalgia, right? You look back on your youth and all of these things, but if they don't have anything to look back on, or their main memories to look back on are them, sitting around with their friends or alone looking at a screen, I really do feel there will be a lot of regret. And that's sad because, yes, we all have regrets, but to look back and wish you had done something differently, to wish you had lived more fully, I guess.
Yeah.
I do see that happening. And actually, a lot, like I was reading a book with my own son called The Amazing Generation, which is all about tech. And there was a bunch of quotes from people in their 20s who look back now and really are regretful that they didn't, go out and experience the things, and they spent hours and hours and hours behind a screen instead of, out with their friends and out, biking or the going to the mall, the movies, whatever it is, going to parties. And that already I'm seeing that from, people who are growing up. And so I think that's going to be a common theme as more of this generation grow up, and, as we all get older, we see things differently and they're going to recognize how much they missed.
Yeah, and that bothers me so much because I do
Mhm.
care about the generation. I mean, that's why I'm here in the first place, and I want what's best for them. And unfortunately, we can't make them do anything. We can't make them make their own decisions. They have to make them themselves. And
Absolutely.
I just want them to see how how much they're being controlled, quite frankly, by people that don't give a crap about them. I'm not talking about
Mhm.
their parents, the people immediately around them. I'm talking about the adults who created the world they're growing up in. So how does all of this affect mental health?
It I feel like everything's so intertwined, and that was the reason why I became so passionate about this subject. Is I noticed all of these mental health issues increasing, like, exponentially, and I couldn't figure out why. And the common theme came down to smartphones. Kids are isolated a lot more
Yeah.
because they're choosing, again, to be on their screens. They're exposed to things they are not ready to be exposed to. Their attention spans are eradicated, essentially. Social skills, the just like need to, check online constantly, get that dopamine hit. All of these things kind of compile, and I've seen a lot more anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. These are like they have quadrupled. I can't even really put a number on it, but whereas they used to be such a minor, issue, again, as teens, people always have dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts and anxiety, but the prevalence of it has ballooned to the point where it's just so scary to see these kids struggling. And yeah, it all came down to the fact that there's never an escape. So, like bullying, for instance, bullying is never going to go away. It's always been around. It doesn't matter if you're a teen, a kid, an adult, bullying exists.
Mhm.
However, when I was a teenager, if things were difficult at school or I was being picked on or whatever, I could go home and I could be free for that period of time I'm at home. I'm free, I'm disconnected, I can take a break from it and remove myself from that situation entirely. And
Right.
now kids don't get that opportunity anymore because it follows them home in their back pocket. So now, not only are they having that hard day at school, but they're coming home, they're being bombarded on Snapchat, on TikTok, or whatever the platform is. It doesn't go away. It's happening throughout the afternoon, the evening. I have had kids come to school and say that they've been told to kill themselves at 3 o'clock in the morning over Snapchat.
Yeah.
Like this, it just never goes away. So obviously, that's going to affect someone's mental health. How can you constantly be connected to, this terrible, bullying situation or whatever it is? You never get that break to be free.
I I wanna piggyback off that. You're absolutely right. I wanna piggyback off that a little bit
Mhm.
and say this directly to the teenager who's listening, who's growing up, who's Gen Alpha and growing up right now in today's society. Part of the issue that you are having, part of the issue why you feel so bad about yourself, part of the issue you have suicidal thoughts, part of the reason why those things are happening. Yes, it's because you are constantly online and being bombarded with images and data. But the problem with it is that you're believing it.
Mhm.
You are actually believing the bullshit served to you on a platter on Instagram, on a website. on wherever, you are actually believing what's put in front of you. How can we, Tara, how can we get the teens that are listening right now to begin to think differently about what they see online? Because ideally, as adults, we like to put the phone down, go outside and play ball and do something not digitally connected. But the truth is, this generation, literally, half of them literally don't even know how to do that because all they
Well,
know is how to be connected to something digital because they've been doing it since they were 2. So
yeah.
how do you expect them to just put something down? That's not realistic. What is realistic for how they handle information, how they handle everything they see online?
Okay. Um, so I would say to anybody who is, seeing these things online and struggling with your anxiety and your mental health or whichever, understanding what the algorithm is, I think is extremely important because if you are sad, if you are depressed and you do pause on a video that is on TikTok or Instagram that is showing sad or depressed content, they're going to continue to feed you that material over and over and over again, which undoubtedly is probably going to make you more sad, more depressed. I know self harm content, suicide content is very common towards teens. So if you're seeing these things, open communication, and which is like the number one thing in my whole platform, is so important. And whether that's your parents or not, because not everybody is comfortable having these conversations with their parents, and I totally get that. Parents, teachers, aunt, uncle, grandparents, cousins, older siblings, older friends, whichever, talking about it is so important because I see too many kids isolating when they're struggling,
Yeah,
and isolation is going to make it so much worse.
it
So
really does.
even if the last thing you wanna do is leave your room, turn on the lights, go outside, talk to somebody, that's probably the best thing that you need to do.
I wanna add this, I'm gonna be real blunt. If you're listening right now
Yeah,
and you're a teen, and I understand we like I said before, we adults wanna tell you to put the phone down, but we know that that's not easy to do because it's what you've known your entire life. But let me also tell you this, I wanna give you a little mind shift here, a little thing to think about. You are the perfect victim. You are the perfect tool. You are the perfect little sheep that they can play with. When she talks about algorithms, when Tara just talked about algorithms, they are set in place for a reason. The stuff that's put in front of your face on Instagram, on TikTok, or whatever the next platform is put there for a freaking reason. And if you're a gamer, they do it in the gaming industry too. They just do it in a different way. That stuff is put in front of your face for a reason because they want you to spend the rest of your life trying to spend your money, your time to live up to something that isn't even freaking real in the first goddamn place. And
yep,
it just infuriates me. You are being the perfect little sheep that they can do whatever they want. They control you. So as long as you keep that phone in your face, as long as you keep that device in your face and you are allowing all of that, I don't mean you need to put it down completely, but when you allow all of that to sit in the couch in the living room of your mind, to stay in there, you are being the perfect little fool they want you to be. And I know none of you want to be little fools, and most of you really aren't, but you're allowing that. I just I just had to say that. I went on my little rant.
no, yeah, I agree because it is, like, those tech companies, they know exactly what they're doing. All of these apps are modeled off of, slot machines, which are the perfect addictive tool. So they
Mhm,
are
mhm.
manipulating kids into becoming addictive because then they have you for the rest of your life. And I don't think any teens want to be manipulated. I think, you want to have free will and be independent and be a leader. And by following along with what these tech companies want, you're not doing that,
I'm gonna give you a prime
right?
example right now, a realistic one that half the audience can relate to. You don't know what you wanna do for the rest of your life. You don't know if you wanna go be a doctor, if you wanna be a janitor, if you wanna be a car mechanic, if you wanna go to college, you just wanna smoke weed the rest of your days and work at McDonald's. You don't know what you wanna do. Why do you think you're confused about that? Think about it. Why are you confused about that? How much information has been thrown in your face or shoved down your throat? A lot of it through social media, but it's not only social media. Why do you think you're confused about that? Stop believing everything you're told. Stop believing everything you're showed. I had to say that, sorry.
Yeah, no, I like it.
So let's dive into your fiction because your fiction is what you write is directly related to this conversation and one of the reasons I had you on. So you write fiction,
Yep.
and fiction is sometimes where it's safe to tell stories. And this isn't a new thing. This isn't a teen thing. This has been true for humans throughout human history. Stories are some of the best ways to teach things. They're also a way to say things that you can't really say out loud. It's safe because, it's just a story. What are what truths are they revealing through your characters in your books um, that you think are expressing what teens want to say but can't?
Yeah, my fiction is for sure a way to tackle very difficult topics in yeah, a way that you can, read a story, which is entertaining, but also take away a lot that's going on. And I felt like there wasn't enough talk about some of these difficult topics in young adult fiction. So some of the topics that I tackle are suicide, depression, sharing intimate photos online and having those photos get out and the effect that that has on somebody's reputation and on their mental
Mm,
health,
mhm.
and trafficking and how online tools are now being used to lure, children in by predators, and how, your parents or you might think that you're safe at home in your room, but you could actually be being a target by someone who is a professional predator. So yeah, I go to some really heavy places.
And I love that you do. And I have a guest coming on soon that's gonna take a deep dive into predator behavior and what we need to
Mhm.
look for. Um, because I really wanna go into that, but we won't.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
but
there's so much to say. Yeah.
it's so, and again, to the teenager listening, I'm not being your parent and saying, "Put the phone down and do something." Yeah, you should, but I know the reality is you're not gonna put the phone down. You can reduce it, you can put the phone down sometimes, that would be helpful. But you need to put barriers up for yourself so that you're blocking the garbage, and I do mean garbage, that they're putting out there and intentionally planting seeds. If I wanna ruin your garden, all I have to do is go plant seeds for weeds in your garden, and eventually they will choke out your flowers and your plants. That is what social media and different forms of technology, all kinds of media, is actually doing to you. They're doing it to you on purpose because I need to break you in order to sell you the solution. Our entire Food and Drug Administration is built off that principle. That's another topic. But
Yeah.
I need to cause the problem. I'm mentally causing the problem for you by telling you you're not good enough, by telling you you need to live up to a standard you will never, ever live up to as a human. So then you come to me for the answer. You get plastic surgery, you getting, the booty things, what are they called? The
Oh
BBL?
gosh. Yeah.
I forgot I just the booty thing. So
Yeah.
you're getting that, you're getting the eyelashes, you're getting them surgically, you're getting all this stuff. You're pretending, going online, pretending that you're an influencer, like you got all this money and it's all fake. You're using half AI and half fake stuff. For what? Because somebody told you that you had to live up to something you'll never live up to.
Yeah.
Stop believing everything you see or are shown because they want you to do that. So
Yeah, and my fiction definitely doesn't come from a judgmental place. I think that's really important. It's meant to just, bring the awareness, because a lot of kids, you're not thinking about what is happening behind the scenes. You're not necessarily thinking about the consequences of your
right.
actions and how that can ripple down. And so the characters in my stories are very authentic teenagers. They're going through experiences that I've witnessed kids go through.
Yeah.
And it's relatable, and then you can just see, like, what are the potential outcomes of this and what is a different path you could have taken, and, what do you do if you are in this situation?
Right.
Because it's very possible that kids could be.
And that's why I keep saying that, that's why I keep saying we adults keep saying put the phone down, you don't need to be so digitally connected, but I'm also aware that that's not a reality for them.
Yeah.
they grew up differently than we do. So it's easy for us to say that because we didn't grow up so digitally connected like they are. And so that's why I
Mhm.
wanna come from a place of because for some teens that will work. Do you understand you're being controlled? Because a whole lot of them don't like that. And,
Yep.
I mean, who does like that? Um, let me ask you this, if you could stop the world for one moment and make adults see what today's teens are silently carrying, what would you show them?
I think I would show the adults just some of the realities of what is happening online because I don't think like, I think a lot of adults are burying their heads in the sand
Yeah.
and aren't willing to have the conversation, and even some of the feedback I've had on my books is like, "This was too hard to read,"
Mm.
from adults, not from kids,
Mm.
from adults.
Yeah.
And for me, if it is hard, then we need to address it. It's not a
Mhm.
matter of ignoring it. Um, so when you do choose to give your kids access to the entire world at their fingertips, it is your responsibility as an adult to help them navigate that. And I think that's the part that's missing for many, not for all, but I think a lot of parents just hand this off and they don't think about the repercussions. And a lot of kids are to, because that line of communication isn't open, are going to, keep this quiet and suffer in silence, which will make the mental health issues worse, the anxiety worse, the depression worse, the prevalence of suicide worse, like all of those things.
Mhm.
So as adults, you need to open your eyes. And if you are choosing to give your kids access to these devices, which I totally understand where parents are coming from when they do that,
Right.
then it is your responsibility as the adult to help your child navigate that and to talk to them, even when it's hard, and to not judge them. Because I think for teenagers, this is my number one advice as somebody who has worked with teenagers for so long. Is you cannot judge them.
Right.
Because if they come to you and they're talking to you about something that's significant to them and a mistake they made or something they did online or whichever, if you judge them, you will lose them. So adults need to wake up, I think.
I've had so many people on here saying essentially the same principle anyway, in different ways. We need to listen
Exactly.
to them and not judge them. It's so important
Mhm.
because if we do, they're never gonna come to us again, and if they're
Nope.
not coming to us, guess who they're coming to?
Mhm.
The worst part is they're coming to nobody. That means they're
Yep.
internalizing things, which
Or
always
they're
gets used.
going to a stranger on the internet
Oh, yeah,
who's going to listen
yes.
to them
Mhm,
and be there for them and offer to help them. I'm doing quotation marks with my fingers
mhm.
because that is how you make kids vulnerable, right?
It really if they can't come to you, you're making them vulnerable for someone else, and I would say they're
Exactly.
gonna internalize it or they're gonna go to the pimps and hoes down the street. That's where they're gonna get
Yep.
their information from.
Mhm.
And the parents I say it like that because no parent wants to hear that, but it's the
No.
truth, you know?
Yep.
What advice do you have for teens for the youth of the world today?
I have a few, I guess. I think even when things feel hard, and this is a message in both of my books too, like obviously life gets really shitty sometimes. Like it's hard. When you're a kid, it feels like those hard moments encompass the rest of your life for all of eternity, forever. And that's how it feels like for the characters in my book. But there's always hope at the end of, this difficult moment. It isn't the whole world for the rest of time entirely. If you mess up, if things feel bleak and terrible, it's such a small snippet of your life, it will get better. I think that's really important for kids to know and to trust your gut because I think a lot of kids haven't been taught to trust their instincts and to listen to that little voice in their head that tells them that something isn't right, and that voice is almost always correct.
Yes.
So I think trust yourself and trust, that feeling in the pit of your stomach and that little voice that's screaming at you to stop. Trust it.
I had an episode, maybe a couple months ago now, and it was one of my rare solo episodes called "You Knew." And I literally talk about that, about how we need to teach our youth, all of us, but especially our youth, trust your gut. The problem is our societies are teaching us from a young age to ignore it, to listen, to silence it. And every single young person listening to me right now, Tara is exactly right. You have a small, still voice in you that tells you things that you ignore. Stop doing that. Be better than us. When I say us, I mean older adults who talked you out of it. Be better than us and listen.
Mhm.
So where can people find you?
I'm primarily on Instagram, so at Tara Hodgson author. I post about, my books, all kinds of other books, and just mental health stuff. And then at my website at www.tarahodgson.ca. Oh, I already forgot my own website. That's embarrassing.
Okay. You're not the first person, and you won't be the last. It's okay. Um, and her website will be in the show notes, or the podcast description, wherever you're listening to this right now. So you can always click on it and see, um, what she has to offer. And I think Tara is very, 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 passionate and deep. So I know that her books are too. So I would advise that you go take a look at them. And, the advice that she said for parents, I just ditto times 100.
Yeah.
Ditto. I don't wanna give a whole speech, just ditto times 100. Well,
Yeah.
Tara, thank you so much for coming on. I have really, really enjoyed talking to you. I wish we had another 6 hours because you and I could go on, but, um, but I really appreciate you coming on, and, I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
And now for a mind-shifting moment. I wanna go back to something that we talked about during this episode. One major point, and both of us said it. And I'm talking to teenagers right now. Adults, you can just sit by and listen. Many of you are falling for and believing what you see and what you hear, what is presented to you. And it bothers me so much because so many of you are so intelligent and beautiful and just awesome. But you're talked out of believing that about yourself because you're believing what's on Instagram, a dating site, what somebody texted yesterday. I want to challenge you to question everything that comes before your face. All media, not just social media, movies, music, posts on Instagram, videos on YouTube. All of it is media, and none of it is just there without intention. I really want you to think about that. What's presented to you? What's the real reason you're told that you're not good enough? Is it so you can buy the products that'll make you better? You are a pawn to these big industries. I'm not talking about your parents and the people down the street. I'm talking about the ones who actually control the media you see and hear and experience. I want you to dig deeply and think, am I just falling for it? Am I just believing everything I'm told? Everything I'm showed? I want you to question all of it. Because when you do, you can begin to take your power back. Stop letting them control you. You've been listening to Mind Shift Power Podcast. For complete show notes on this episode and to join our global movement, find us at fatimabay.com. Until next time, always remember, there's power in shifting your thinking.